in 73 BCE. The usual sounds of clashing weapons and shouted commands were replaced by an eerie silence that would soon echo across the entire Roman Republic. Spartacus stood among 78 fellow gladiators, his scarred hands gripping makeshift weapons forged from kitchen knives and tools. This Thracian warrior, once a soldier turned slave, was about to ignite the most significant slave rebellion in Roman history. But what drove a man to risk everything against the most powerful military machine of the ancient world? The gladiatorial schools of Capua were more than entertainment venues. They were pressure cookers of human desperation. These men, torn from their homelands and families, were forced to kill for the amusement of Roman crowds. They lived knowing each day could be their last, not in glorious battle, but as spectacle for a society that viewed them as less than human. When Spartacus and his companions broke free from their barracks, they weren't just escaping slavery. They were challenging the very foundation of Roman civilization. The Roman economy depended on slave labor. Every villa, every farm, every construction project relied on the forced labor of conquered peoples. A successful slave revolt didn't just threaten individual masters. It threatened the entire social and economic structure of the Republic. The rebels' first victory came at Mount Vesuvius, where they defeated a hastily assembled Roman force. This wasn't supposed to happen. Romans were the conquerors, the masters of warfare, yet here were slaves, the lowest of the low, defeating trained legionaries. Word spread like wildfire through the slave quarters of Italy, and thousands flocked to join Spartacus's growing army. What made this rebellion different was its leadership. Spartacus possessed military knowledge from his days as a soldier, but more importantly, he understood Roman tactics and weaknesses. He transformed a desperate escape into a coordinated military campaign that would terrorize the Republic for 2 years. The Roman Senate initially dismissed the rebellion as a minor disturbance. They sent praetors with small forces, expecting quick victories. Instead, they suffered humiliating defeats. The rebels weren't just surviving, they were winning, capturing weapons, supplies, and territory. The unthinkable was happening. Slaves were defeating the masters of the Mediterranean world. As winter approached in 73 BCE, Spartacus's army had grown to nearly 100,000 followers. They controlled vast areas of southern Italy, living free for the first time in years. But freedom came with a price. Every victory brought the rebels closer to Rome's inevitable retaliation, and Rome had never tolerated defiance of its authority. The rebellion exposed the brutal reality beneath Roman civilization's polished surface. While Romans celebrated their achievements in law, architecture, and governance, their entire way of life rested on the backs of enslaved millions. Spartacus's revolt wasn't just about personal freedom. It was a mirror held up to Roman society, reflecting its deepest contradictions and fears. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell to follow this incredible journey through ancient Rome's darkest chapter. In the next episode, we'll witness how Rome's greatest general finally cornered the rebel army, setting the stage for one of history's most brutal displays of power. The year 72 BCE marked a turning point in the slave rebellion that had humiliated Rome for over a year. The Senate, desperate to end this crisis that threatened the very core of Roman authority, turned to Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome and a general hungry for military glory. Crassus understood what his predecessors had not. This wasn't just a military campaign, it was a battle for the soul of the Roman Republic. Every day, the rebellion continued. Every victory Spartacus achieved sent shockwaves through the slave populations across the Mediterranean. If slaves in Italy could defeat Roman legions, what was to stop uprisings in Greece, Gaul, or Spain? The Roman general assembled 8 legions, nearly 50,000 men, and implemented a strategy of brutal efficiency. Where previous commanders had sought quick victories, Crassus planned systematic destruction. He rebuilt Roman discipline through fear, famously decimating units that showed cowardice, executing every 10th man as an example to the rest. Spartacus, meanwhile, faced an impossible choice. His army had grown massive, but with size came problems. Feeding 100,000 people required constant movement and raiding. The rebellion had attracted not just gladiators and trained fighters, but entire families, women, children, elderly slaves who sought freedom but couldn't fight. The army had become a migration of the desperate. The Thracian leader's original plan had been to cross the Alps and return his followers to their homelands. But as the rebellion grew, so did the expectations of his followers. Many wanted to march on Rome itself, to burn the city that had enslaved them. Others dreamed of creating a new society in southern Italy, free from Roman rule. Crassus exploited these divisions masterfully. He didn't just pursue the rebel army. He systematically destroyed their supply lines, burned crops, and fortified strategic positions. The Romans had learned from their earlier defeats. They would no longer face the rebels in open battle until they held overwhelming advantage. The decisive moment came when Spartacus attempted to cross from Sicily back to the Italian mainland. Pirates had promised transport, but Roman gold proved more persuasive than rebel promises. Stranded in the toe of Italy, the slave army found itself trapped between Crassus's legions and the sea. In desperation, Spartacus attempted to break through Roman lines in early 71 BCE. The final battle took place in the rough terrain of southern Italy, where Roman discipline finally overcame rebel desperation. The gladiator who had terrorized the Republic for 2 years fell fighting, his body so mangled in the carnage that it was never identified. But Spartacus's death was only the beginning of Rome's vengeance. Crassus had captured approximately 6,000 rebels alive, and he intended to send a message that would echo through history. The Roman Republic would demonstrate what happened to those who dared challenge its authority. The captured slaves were about to become part of the most horrific display of state-sponsored terror the ancient world had ever witnessed. Their suffering would line the most important road in the Roman Empire, serving as a warning to every slave, every conquered people, every potential rebel who might dare to dream of freedom. Like this video if you're learning something new about ancient Rome's brutal reality. Next week, we'll explore how Rome turned the Appian Way into a highway of horror, creating a spectacle of suffering that would haunt the empire for generations. Make sure to comment below with your thoughts on this incredible historical story. The Via Appia stretched from Rome to Brindisi, 350 miles of perfectly engineered stone that represented the pinnacle of Roman engineering. Built in 312 BCE, this highway had carried legions to victory, merchants to profit, and citizens to the far reaches of the empire. But in 71 BCE, it would become something far more sinister. A monument to terror that would define Rome's relationship with its enslaved millions. Crassus's decision to crucify the 6,000 captured rebels along the Appian Way wasn't born from rage or emotion. It was calculated political theater, designed to send an unmistakable message throughout the Roman world. Every cross would stand as a warning, every dying slave a reminder of what awaited those who dared defy Roman authority. Crucifixion was the ultimate punishment in Roman society, reserved for slaves, foreigners, and the most heinous criminals. It combined maximum physical suffering with complete social humiliation. The victim died slowly, sometimes over days, exposed to the elements and public view. It was designed not just to kill, but to dehumanize, to reduce a person to an object of pity and fear. The logistics of this mass execution reveal the terrifying efficiency of Roman administration. 6,000 crosses required enormous amounts of wood, nails, and rope. Teams of soldiers, carpenters, and executioners worked methodically along the highway, spacing the crosses at regular intervals. The condemned were forced to carry their own crossbeams, adding physical exhaustion to their psychological terror. The crucifixions began at the outskirts of Rome and continued south for over 100 miles. Travelers on the Via Appia would pass cross after cross, each bearing a dying or dead rebel. The sight was deliberately overwhelming, a corridor of suffering that took days to traverse completely. The message was clear: this is what happens to those who challenge Rome. But the spectacle served multiple purposes beyond simple intimidation. It reinforced the social hierarchy that placed Roman citizens at the top and slaves at the bottom. Every cross reminded viewers of their place in society, whether they were free Romans who could feel superior to the condemned, or slaves who learned the consequences of rebellion. The psychological impact extended far beyond the immediate horror. Roman writers described how the sight affected travelers for generations. Parents would point to weathered crosses and tell their children stories of the Great Rebellion. The Via Appia became a classroom for Roman values, teaching submission through the language of terror. For the Roman elite, the crucifixions represented successful crisis management. The rebellion had threatened their fortunes, their lifestyle, their very identity as masters of the world. By reducing the rebels to tortured corpses, they reclaimed their sense of superiority and control. The slaves who had briefly dreamed of freedom were now reminders of its impossibility. The bodies remained on the crosses for months, slowly decomposing in the Mediterranean sun. Roman law typically prohibited leaving the crucified unburied, but exceptions were made for this display of power. The skeletons served as long-term warnings, visible reminders of Rome's capacity for vengeance. Yet the crucifixions also revealed something else about Roman society, its fundamental weakness. A civilization that required such brutal displays of power to maintain order was admitting its own instability. The 6,000 crosses testified not just to Roman strength, but to Roman fear of their own subjects. The rebellion of Spartacus ended with his death in battle, but its memory lived on in every cross along the Appian Way. The gladiator who had dreamed of freedom became a symbol of both hope and despair for the enslaved millions throughout the empire. His revolt had failed, but it had also proven that Rome's power was not absolute, that even the mighty republic could be shaken by the courage of those it oppressed. The Via Appia returned to its normal functions: trade, travel, and administration. But for generations, Romans traveling this highway would pass the sites where rebellious slaves had died, reminders of the price of defiance in a world built on human bondage. This concludes our journey through one of history's most brutal displays of power. If this series has opened your eyes to the darker realities of ancient Rome, please subscribe to our channel and share these videos with others who appreciate real history. What do you think about Rome's response to the slave rebellion? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the untold stories of the ancient world.